Welcome to the world of Landry design. In the next few moments, we're going to be looking at creating custom televisions, projectors, and stands for use in the VideoScreen 4 family of plugin objects for Vectorworks. As we dive into this, there are a few things you'll want to understand. First off, televisions, projectors, and stands are simply symbols. They're placed by and contained by the plugin objects, but they're still symbols. In the case of television symbols, the symbol is just a shell, or a case, if you will. The plugin object creates the screen with the image that you see. In the case of projectors and stands, the tools place the symbols, but then the tools create all the other geometry that you see, such as cone lines and screens and dress kits. Okay, but I just wanted to make sure you understood that the televisions, projectors, and stands are simply symbols. Okay, they are resources, and they're stored in Vectorworks files in specific locations. Let's pop out and take a look. I'm looking at a folder called VW19 User Files. Okay, this is my user folder for my Vectorworks 2014 setup. If you use user folders, yours is going to have a similar structure, but the name is probably going to be quite different. If you don't use user folders, what we're going to be looking at will be in your main applications folder, but the structure will still be very similar. Okay, so within our user folder or our main application folder, you'll want to find libraries, defaults, and then you'll scroll down till you see VideoScreen. Now this folder was installed when you installed VideoScreen 4 for the first time. So this should all be there waiting for you. This last folder is only intended for use for older or legacy versions of Vectorworks. So you can pretty much ignore that if you're using one of the more current versions. Screen Images stores Vectorworks files containing the screen images that you might use in your models. And this folder contains the stock images. It might contain custom things like logos you've created, things like that. We're not going to spend any time here today because Nemetschek Vectorworks already has a pretty good video on how to use the folder and how to create your own custom content. Okay, the remaining 7 folders are where we're going to live today. Okay, these top 5 store the shells or the casings that VS4 television uses. Okay? And you get a pretty good idea of what's in the folders by their names. For example, this one here stores the 16:9 ratio flat screens. Okay, projector models are here and stand models are here. Let's take a look at this one to see what the contents look like. You'll notice there are 3 Vectorworks files here. And the reason I'm showing you this is I want to make the point that you can have as many Vectorworks files in here as you want. The tools will go out and scan them, and it will report back the symbols that are in those files for use in your Vectorworks tools or your VideoScreen tools. Okay, this is the stock file that comes with the tools, and these are simply 2 that I've been noodling with. So the tool still sees all 3. Okay, so I just wanted to make the point. These are simply symbols, and they're stored in those resource folders. Hey, because they're symbols, we have to do something special with them in order for VideoScreen, any of the VideoScreen tools to be able to use them. And that's this. We're going to apply this record that we see right here. I'm going to right-click on it and edit it so we can take a peek. Okay, there are 15 fields we see here. The last 2 are not used yet. That's for future expansion. These first 2, again, if you're running a more current version of Vectorworks, these are not used at all. These are more for legacy use. These remaining fields will be used in different combinations by the different tools. Not all of the fields are used at the same time. We simply created one record format for all the tools to use, so you'd end up with multiple records in your drawings, adding more clutter that you really don't need. There are 2 things I want you to notice. First off, we've got some places here to input dimensions, but they are still simply text fields. Okay, because they're text fields, you have to make very sure that you include your units mark. Like here I've got inches. If you don't include a units mark, you're going to end up with huge headaches. Things will not translate from user to user if they're using different units, so you could have issues there. The other thing I want you to see is this type field. Here it's blank, but this always will have to have either TV, projector, or stand included. If you don't see one of those three words, the symbol's not going to work and you're going to end up with errors. Okay, so again, we've got symbols, they're stored in resource folders, and they've all got this record applied. So let's take a look at the individual symbols. Okay, here is our setup for a television. I've got a sample symbol here for you to see. Okay, a few things I want you to notice. Width, height, tilt, and height to the floor are the parameters that we'll need to make sure that we include when we attach this record. Okay, the other thing I want you to see, and I'm going to zoom in, down here, this is the case's insertion point. Up here is the insertion point for where the screen is going to be inserted. Remember I told you the case is a symbol, whereas the screen is something that the plugin object creates. So height to the floor is how high above that insertion point that screen gets created. Width and height are the dimensions of the screen. Again, not of the case, but of the screen. And tilt is how far back the screen tilts if you're using a tilting layout. Okay, so that's a quick look at some of the parameters that we're going to use. Let's go ahead and build a model. Okay, here I've got some very basic 2D and 3D geometry. Okay, I'm in a front view, and something I want you to notice is that I've placed this 3D locus point, and I'm going to lose the resource browser and bring up the object info palette. With it selected, you can see that I've got it at my origin. That's because I want to be very particular about where all the geometry lives relative to that origin. Okay? This 3D geometry is nothing more than a pair of extrusions. Okay? This smaller one is going to create the cutout for where the screen's going to go. The larger is going to become my case. So I'm going to select both of them, come up here to model, and then say subtract solids, and you'll see that the larger of the two is highlighted. So I'm going to say OK, and if we do a hidden line rendering, you can see we've just created that shell. Okay. The other thing that I want you to see is where I've got what's going to become our origin located. Okay, if I snap to it, the cursor will show you where the screen is going to end up. Now you'll notice that it's recessed back a little bit into the shell. Okay, that's quite intentional. So if you create a television symbol and you want your screen recessed, the front face of your television will need to be in front of your intended insertion point. Okay. The other thing I want you to see is that the screen is oriented, or the television's oriented so that its screen points downstream, relative to Vectorworks. Okay. I'm going to select my 2D geometry, drag it over on top of the 3D, and we're going to zoom back in. Alright, we've got 2D geometry, 3D geometry. It's time to make a symbol. Okay, I'm going to select it all, and I'm going to come up here to Organization, and I'm going to choose Create Symbol. Now this command is probably in your Modify menu item. I'm using a custom workspace, so that's why it's there. And we're going to call this Andy TV. We want the insertion point dictated by the next mouse click, and I do not want Convert to Group toggled. I'm going to say OK, and we're going to snap to the 3D locus, and we're going to say OK. So now we've got a nice hybrid symbol. Okay, now to make it usable for VideoScreen, I'm going to go to a 3D view and double click. And once we're in the 3D portion, you'll notice we're starting off with things selected. I want to click anywhere in my drawing to deselect everything. So the OIP needs to say no selection. I'm going to go to the Data tab, and see, here's this record I showed you a little bit ago. You want to check the box. Okay, and again, nothing is selected, so checking the box is going to attach this record to the symbol definition itself, not to any specific geometry. Okay, I'm going to come down here, and I know that screen wants to be an inch off the insertion point, so that's the height off the floor. Type must be TV. If it doesn't say TV, you're going to get errors. We're not going to tilt the screen back at all. The width here, I know that I want it to be 32 inches. Okay, I could measure that if I wanted to, but I just know going in that's what I want. Okay, and I know I want it to be 18 inches tall. Third-party creator and website is where I could put my name and my website. So if I was to share this symbol with anybody else, anytime they used it, they would see my information in the OIP. I'm not going to worry about that for now, but feel free to use that, as you wish. Okay? So I'm going to get out of the symbol, okay, and I'm going to close the OIP, and I'm going to open up the resource browser, and you can see here we've now got a hybrid symbol called Andy TV. I'm going to delete it off the screen, and I'm going to open up a blank drawing by saying New, Create Blank Document, okay, and I'm going to right-click on Andy TV, and I'm going to say Import and OK. The reason I'm starting with a blank drawing is I don't want to see symbols for things like title blocks or lights showing up as options for VideoScreen. Hey, if I had nothing but TVs in here, that'd be a different story, but we're starting from blank, so I want to start with a fresh drawing. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say File, Save As, and I've already got this created because if I didn't, I'd have to restart Vectorworks so that it knew that another resource was out there. So I'm simply going to click on that. I'm going to say, do I want to replace it? Yes. Okay. So now we've got our TV exported. Okay, I'm going to go here to a blank save view. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to delete TV from the drawing that we're in. Okay, just because I can. Okay, and you'll see here I've got a tool set with TV already available to me. I'm going to click on it, and I don't want to import that format. I'm going to say OK. I'm going to click to insert a TV and click again to set rotation. Again, I don't want to import because it's already there. Okay, so I'm going to come to a 3D view. And once I'm there, let's close the resource browser and reopen the object info palette. And we come down here and it's a 16 by 9. Okay, and if we scroll up, you'll see Andy TV. And there's the model that we just created. Okay, something I want you to see is this pink line. That's where the screen got inserted. The black geometry is what we created, a minute ago. The screen is this pink that the plugin object created. Okay, let's come up here. Let's do a final quality RenderWorks. And there's the logo on the screen telling us that our hard work just paid off and our new symbol works. Okay, so that's a quick look at creating TVs. What about the other two types? Okay, Projector works in a very similar way. It's just the fields are a little different. Okay, the insertion point for a projector symbol is the bottom of the symbol, as if it's sitting on the ground plane, but in 2D centered on the lens. Okay? And these other fields are the things we need to make sure we fill in that record. So here, lens to top is from this lens center to the top of the projector body. Lens to bottom and height from floor are two separate parameters. They get the exact same dimension, okay? Which is from the center of the lens down to the bottom, okay? And then INSP to front, that means insertion point to the front, and that's from the insertion point to the front of the projector body. And then INSP to back is the insertion point to the back of the projector. And one note here, with this sort of format projector, insertion point to front will be a positive number. If you have geometry that goes out beyond the lens, such as a cage, that value would be negative. Okay, so that's a quick look at at the parameters that will go in. Let's go in and edit a symbol to make it work with VideoScreen. Okay, here I've got a save view for projector construction, and you can see I've got a projector. It's already a symbol. We're looking at the 2D part. Okay, and one thing I want you to see is that zero orientation for a projector means it's pointed up screen. Okay, let's go to a 3D view, and you can see our projector is simply, a cylinder for our lens and an extruded rectangle for the body. Okay, let's double click on it. Let's say the 3D component, and just like we did with television, we're going to click on data. We're going to attach this record, and before I go any further, I'm going to make sure that my type is projector. Okay, now in terms of getting some of the dimensions, okay, let's go to a side view. We're in the screen plane. I'm going to come down here and grab my tape measure. Okay, height from the floor is going to be 9 inches, and that's the same thing for lens to bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and say 9 inches, and lens to bottom is 9 inches. Okay, and I know that that lens is centered, so lens to top is also going to be 9 inches. Okay, and what about insertion point to back? So let's grab that measurement. Okay, that's going to be 3 feet 4 inches, which is 40 inches. So insertion point to the front, to the back is 40 inches. And I know that my lens is 4 inches deep, so insertion point to front is 4 inches. Tilt, width, and all that doesn't matter. We're not going to take the time to fill in the third-party info, but feel free to do that as you wish. Two things I want to reiterate here. One, here is that the 3D locus showing us where the insertion point is. Okay, it's at the origin of our symbol definition, so the projector is sitting on the ground plane. And again, like I showed you with zero rotation, the projector is pointed up screen. Okay, so far so good. Let's exit. Okay, and I'm going to open up a fresh drawing again. Okay, and I'm going to close the Object Info palette and reopen the resource browser. Okay, and here's our symbol called AndyPJ. We want to import it. I'm going to say OK, and then we're going to save as. I'm going to come back out here to VideoScreen, and instead we're going to put it in Projector Models. And I've already got a file here called LPJ. Okay, and just to reiterate, the file's already been created to save me from having to restart Vectorworks. Okay, I'm going to say save, and yes, I want to replace it. Okay, now let's close that drawing. Now let's come back here to blank. Okay, and Video Master is our current class. Let's go back to our Objects tool set and come down here to VS4 Projection. Okay, I'm going to insert and set rotation. So there is a VS4 Projection instance. Let's close the resource browser and reopen the Object Info palette. We're going to come down here, and here for Projector Model, it says Projector Medium. Here's AndyPJ. It just got created for us, and we can see that it's being inserted correctly. So our hard work has paid off. Okay, last but not least, what about stands? Okay, here's a quick model of a piece of scaff which we're using as stands. The only things we're really worried about here are where the insertion point is and the height from floor parameter. Notice that the insertion point is at the center of the stands. That's why I've got this little extension up here. Okay, and height from floor is the height at which you want projectors placed. More than likely that top surface of that stand. Okay, let's go over to the stand construction, say view, and you can see here that I've already got a stand created. Let's say that this is a 5-foot piece of truss on a floor base. Okay, I'm going to double click on it. We're going to edit the 3D component, and while we're here, just like we've been doing, We're going to connect this record. I'm going to come down and type has to be stand. Again, if it doesn't, you're going to get an error. Height from floor is going to be the height of that extrusion, which is 5 feet, and it's 2 inches off the floor, so we know that our height from the floor is 62 inches. Okay, we'll go ahead and accept that. Height from floor and stand are filled in. We're good to go. Let's get out of our symbol definition. And just like we've been doing, we're going to open a blank file. I'm going to close the Object Info palette, reopen the resource browser. Okay, here's our stand. We called it Andy Truss. We're going to import it, and we're going to save our stand out there in the resource folders. We're going to say Save As. Here's VideoScreen, and here's the file I've already created. Do I want to replace it? Yes, I do. I'm going to get out of the stand drawing. Okay, and let's delete this from the screen. And let's go back to our blank file, or our blank save view, which is no longer blank. It happens to have an instance of VideoScreen 4 projection in it. We're going to close the resource browser and reopen the Object Info palette. And let's raise that screen off the floor, 36 inches. And let's come down here where we see vertical position, screen center. Instead, we're going to make it stand. And it defaults to a stand model of the scaffolding. And we're going to scroll up where you see Andy Truss. And you can see that all of our hard work is paid off. We have a custom projector sitting on a custom stand. So I hope that this has been somewhat helpful to you. Those of you creating those custom elements, please feel free to contact us if you have any questions or comments. The URL on the screen will lead you to a contact page. If you've got questions about any of the other tools you see, please feel free to contact us as well. Thank you very much for your time.